49ers running back Christian McCaffrey at mandatory minicamp with a new contract, 2-year extension with the 49ers, why he signed it, the 49ers plan, and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you as always at BD Peacock at Crocky209. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We love our everydayers, and we especially love it when you hit that subscribe button, the thumbs up, the notification bell on YouTube. And of course, you can find us everywhere you listen to this podcast. And today's episode of Locked On 49ers is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Terms apply. And it is a Winky Wednesday. And those of you that are regulars to the show know the score on Wednesdays. So let's bring on today's guest.
Nicholas Winkler, come on down.
Can't believe it.
Wink, what's happening, my man? Welcome back from Italy, your vacation. He wasn't with us last week. My old buddy, Nicholas Winkler, former podcast co-host with me on a former podcast before I started doing Locked On 49ers years ago now. We're talking over 7 years ago now. Can't believe that. My former radio colleague, and as he is known here, the voice of the fan, Mr. Nicholas Winkler. Wink, what do you think? You come back into the country, and we got mandatory mini camps, we got players on the field, and we got new money for running back Christian McCaffrey, and what looks like basically a 2-year extension on a deal that he already had going through 2025, but the money is kind of so that that last contract doesn't really exist anymore. It's kind of a 4-year contract now is where Christian McCaffrey is, and gets some now money, gets some guaranteed money, which he didn't have left on his old deal in the short term, which is huge. What are your thoughts on Christian McCaffrey's new contract, Wayne?
Well, like you said, I wake up today, I'm a little jet lagged, I'm out of sorts, and I see video of Christian McCaffrey, like walking out to the practice field. I'm like, is this old footage? What is this going on? Oh no, this is new. He showed up. Great. So this is before all of the contract stuff had really dropped. And so, then later in the day, I see the new contract extension. And I mean, you're talking about the best running back in football. You're talking about the reigning offensive player of the year. The 49ers have locked him down for some additional time, freed up some cap space in doing so too. I mean, this is a win-win for sure.
Big time win-win. And Croc, we had talked about the Christian McCaffrey absence from voluntary OTAs and, not thinking it was a big deal. And look, McCaffrey doesn't need a lot of practice time, but he's gung-ho about stuff. Like, he came out 100 miles an hour in the first day of voluntary OTAs last year. So it was a little curious that he wasn't around. Then we heard the wedding thing. It's like, he's planning a wedding, whatever it is. I guess that's, not a big deal. Turns out, no, he was angling for a new contract, and he got some new money. Now, I will say weddings are expensive. And for a superstar running back with a famous wife, that might be a little fancy affair. So maybe he needed that signing bonus to pay for the wedding. So it wasn't about planning. It was about paying for the stinking thing. But congrats to McCaffrey. He does sign an extension. I'm going to get into the details of this deal and why I think it's very interesting. And Wink, I think you nailed it on the win-win. Croc, he did want a new contract. Guess what? He got it. So Juwan Jennings didn't show up to voluntary minicamp or voluntary OTAs. He got a new deal. Christian McCaffrey didn't show up to voluntary workouts. He got a new deal. Brandon Aiyuk up next. He hasn't showed up to anything yet. He wasn't on the field for the mandatory stuff either. But Croc, let's start with Christian McCaffrey.
We brought it up. People said, nah, it's just a wedding. And we're like, could he want some new money? Because the money in the contract he was on was from Carolina. It had nothing to do with the 49ers. And I think when we talk about the 49ers and their weapons, it starts with Christian McCaffrey. When Kyle Shanahan thinks about the offense, it starts with Christian McCaffrey. And he has been everything and more that we thought he would be when coming to the 49ers. So I think it's definitely justified for him to get this new contract that he has. I think it reset the running back market in a way. I know you're going to go into deeper details about, his contract and what that entails. But overall, couldn't be happier. He's been awesome as a 49er. And but it was curious, it was kind of interesting to see. Well, he's not at OTAs. He's always there. They talk about having to slow him down during OTAs. And we're like, man, maybe there's a holdout. Now, holdout might still be a strong word, but I don't know if it was just the wedding. I asked you guys, I got married at the courthouse. I asked y'all, I'm like, do you have to take time away, like, to prepare for a wedding? I don't know.
No, you have to work more because you got to pay for the stinking thing. I'm just, the Tiger, the Tiger King meme. It's like, I don't know if I'm going to financially recover from this. Like, it's no joke paying for a wedding, especially
did
you're paying
you pay for a wedding. Did you have a bigger wedding?
We had a decent sized wedding. It was in San Francisco. We made some things more affordable for ourselves with the way we planned it out and stuff. And, we did have some help, a lot of help, and, paid for some stuff ourselves. But yeah, it's no joke paying for a wedding. So,
I think I paid $150. So
guys, I run a restaurant and event venue. So let me tell you, weddings are not cheap.
My wife wants to renew. This is how expensive weddings can be. My wife wants to renew our vows for our 10-year wedding anniversary. And I said, why don't we just buy a house instead? So
there you go. Down payment on a house or have a renew vows. I think that's an easy one for me, but maybe the wife has different thoughts on that one.
Back to McCaffrey real quick. You said, like, I'm not sure if it was a holdout. I think it was more of like a power play, right? Where he's just like, I'm just going to kind of stay at home. I'm not going to show up. This isn't mandatory. I'm going to stay home during voluntary. And, and maybe I'll have my agent mention that I want a little extension.
Yeah. What are you going to do? Play without me? So it's one of those things. It's like, yeah, okay, good luck with that, guys. And so what I thought, so actually let's go to some reporting, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the contract next. So Diana Rossini, who's had some nice scoops on 49ers and has some nice relationships with, I think, a lot of players around the leagues, where she gets a lot of information, less from the agent side. And I want to get into the agent side next. But Diana Rossini says that Christian McCaffrey wasn't attending voluntary OTAs and his desire for a new deal was known internally. The 49ers make sure they keep their guy happy. He is signing a 2-year extension averaging $19 million per year per sources, a new deal, and wedding this summer. So keeping him happy, I think, is a big part of that. And then we'll get to the money in a second. But I think for Christian McCaffrey, keeping him happy was important. And he still was already the highest paid. Like, his old deal still hadn't been surpassed by any running backs that he signed years ago with the Carolina Panthers. But the guarantees of this deal lock him in for the next 2 years that weren't there before. Like, the 49ers could have cut him after the season if something, goes terribly wrong, and that could have been it. So guaranteeing the next couple of years, even though he's already under contract, and then give him a little bit of bump on top of that, making sure he stays the highest paid running back in the NFL, I think was absolutely huge. And I just think, like, the cap nod, the tip of the cap to Christian McCaffrey. You're the best running back in the league. I know all these wide receivers are making all kinds of money. You do deserve to get paid for what you've done for this team. And I know it could end quickly for you. So in the short term, we're going to give you more money, and we're going to, let your agent parade around this number, $19 million per year, blowing away the $14 million per year he's already getting to be the highest paid running back in the NFL on that 2-year extension of $19 million per year. The reality is the numbers are very different than that, the way it works out. And this becomes a huge win-win for Christian McCaffrey and the 49ers. But for the McCaffrey side, I think it's really important that it's just like the recognition, be like, yep, you're a dude and you deserve a little bit more money, and, go do your thing and then go get married. And then we'll see you in training camp. I think that was a big part of it. And 49ers GM John Lynch said, quote, "He's been everything we thought he would be and more. He's versatile. His versatile skill set has been a seamless fit within our offense. His professionalism and work ethic are as exemplary as I've seen since I've been associated with the NFL." So that's where John Lynch was coming from in giving Christian McCaffrey a little bit of bump. And I think he really echoes something that maybe I didn't appreciate about Christian McCaffrey before he became a 49er, knowing he was already really good, knowing, okay, he's more than a running back, he's a receiver and all those things. That's all fine. But how he goes about his business, how hard he plays, how hard he fights for every inch that he gets out there, the effort he puts into every cut when he's on the football field. Never wants to come out of a game. More on that actually in a minute as well. Quote from Kyle Shanahan. Those are things that you really appreciate. And like John Lynch mentioned it, and I've talked about it before, and it's something from afar. You don't really know about a guy. You think you know a guy. When you see it every week, and for John Lynch, he sees it every day inside the building. He's a different cat, Christian McCaffrey is. And so, well-deserved for Christian McCaffrey to get more money when it's hard for running backs to get that money. Next, the money. How does this work for the 49ers? A 31-year-old running back in 4 years. You're extending a running back for 4 years who's entering his 28-year-old season. We'll talk about it next and why it is such a win-win for both the 49ers and Christian McCaffrey next. This episode of Locked On 49ers is sponsored by Game Time. Game Time makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier than ever. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip off. We're talking killer last-minute deals, whether it's NBA Finals tickets, NHL, WNBA, Major League Baseball, or you got one of those games circled on the NFL calendar this season. Concerts, comedy shows, theater events, whatever it is near you. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes all the guesswork out of buying tickets. I love the way the views from your seat works, too, in the app. You pull up a seat, and then you use your phone, and it's panoramic, and you look around as if you're actually in the seat. It's not just a static photo from the seat in the ballpark. And, of course, fees. Everybody hates fees at checkout. You toggle on the all-in pricing feature, so you see all the totals up front. You don't get surprised with those hidden fees at checkout at Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets and a whole lot more with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, let's get into the money. And I love this about the NFL. 2 years, $19 million extension. Okay, I guess. Not exactly, though. There was some new money added to this deal. But essentially, this is how the deal breaks down for Christian McCaffrey. It becomes you throw out the 2 years. He was already signed through 2025. And yes, there's 2 more years added to his deal. So now Christian McCaffrey signed through 2027. But what it really does is make the $24 million or so he was going to get paid the next 2 seasons, basically turns that money into guaranteed money. And he was going to see that money anyway. So this doesn't really, this wasn't a big expenditure for the 49ers to do this extension with Christian McCaffrey, which is why it's such a win-win, which is why it's like you let him take his victory lap on this new extension, because it's really not that difficult for the 49ers financially to do and figure out. And in a lot of ways, it gives the 49ers flexibility. So the money he was going to make the next couple of years, he gets a few more million. He gets about $4 million more the next couple of years. And the money he was going to get anyway becomes guaranteed. And the 49ers are able to give him a signing bonus now and lower his cap number this year to create even more space right now. And they've already got a little bit of extra space because of the post June 1st, the June 2nd stuff that happened this week. The finances change a little bit, and Eric Armstead and some other deals come off the books. So you actually gain a lot of cap space this week if you're the San Francisco 49ers. And part of that is because with Christian McCaffrey and his new deal, this year one now in 2024, the deal, you give him the $1.3 million base salary, and then the signing bonus, which gets prorated through the rest of the contract. What's interesting is the 2 new years. So now those first 2 years that Christian McCaffrey was already going to be signed through 2025, those just become more guaranteed. And look, he was going to stay signed through 2025. Even if he broke his leg tomorrow, the 49ers are going to bring him back one more run in 2025 anyway. So that money becomes guaranteed. But really what happens in the next extra 2 years that were added to the deal, the 49ers can get out of this contract still if they want to. So while he's signed through 2027, if he falls off a cliff like other running backs do approaching 30, he's still on a 2-year contract if the 49ers want that. So he'll get paid a little bit more. It's guaranteed now for these next 2 years, but it really becomes a team option for those last 2 years, 2026 and 2027 for Christian McCaffrey, and they lower the cap number in 2024. So a huge amount of versatility. And for the 49ers record keeping, mostly what it does is it turns 2026 and 2027 into team option years for Christian McCaffrey, and allows them to essentially turn Christian McCaffrey's contract into more of a what one of those restructures usually looks like, where you just convert the upcoming year's contract to signing bonus, and then you spread that out. It's kind of what the 49ers ended up doing. So the 49ers really don't pay a lot more money for Christian McCaffrey, even though the headline coming from, the agent is 2-year, $19 million per extension. Not really how it works out. And if the 49ers don't want to pay the whatever $17 million cap hit would be in the last year of those 4 years, they can trade Christian McCaffrey really easily. So they're not really locked into 4 years. They're just locked into 2 years more, but they were already going to pay him for 2 years anyway. So this is a huge win contract for the 49ers, because a lot of versatility with how this is structured. And, obviously Christian McCaffrey deserves all of the headlines and deserves a little bit more scratch because he's such a huge part of the offense. And I think another thing it does, guys, is, and this is maybe my favorite part, because look, I'm chairman of the West Coast chapter of Running Backs Don't Matter, right? And it's hard to pay running backs long term, and that's the big part of it, is the attrition and spending a first round pick, plus you're spending a whole bunch of money on a running back when they're more easily replaceable than other positions, and they get hurt so often. But what this deal is, and I think we're going to start seeing more of this for players, is they can kind of creep up with the annual salary a little bit, but they're just shorter deals. So I think that's what we're going to start to see with top running backs. We're going to see big money deals, or bigger money than it was for a while, but short contracts. So the biggest implications from this contract, Wink, might be for other running backs later around the league that get new contracts.
Yeah. And well, my question, I think, to you on this contract, because I know you've done a lot more research on this than the average person, and coming at you from the fan perspective. So, I mean, what would be the downfall for the 49ers of cutting him in those last 2 years if he does kind of, start to is there just going to be like a big dead cap money hit to the salary cap? I mean, because I don't see, why, if you are Christian McCaffrey and his agent, you would sign something like this. Is it just more so to get the money right now? Like, I want the money in hand, guaranteed?
To pay for the wedding, if we're being honest. No, let's see if they have it broken down yet at Over the Cap. Fantastic work they do at overthecap.com. And yes, the new extension is up now, so we can actually kind of plug in the numbers and see what it would look like if Christian McCaffrey was cut or traded. So let's say Christian McCaffrey was cut before the 2027 season, the last year of the deal. They would take a $7 million dead money hit, but they would save $19 million against their salary cap. So,
okay.
Yeah. And then year 3 is a little, it's, year 3, they could save some money if they traded them, but they wouldn't really save any money if they it's pretty much the same. So essentially year 3, 2026, he's kind of locked in a little bit more to a third year, which he wasn't before, but he's definitely locked in the next 2 years, 2024 and 2025. And they can definitely get out of this deal before the 4th year very easily, whether it's cut or trade.
Yeah, and as a 49er fan
at that point as well, he might be a wide receiver at that point.
Sure.
So maybe it's a bargain of a contract with a $16 million base salary in year 4 of this contract too, right? It might be he might be a bargain for what wide receivers going to be getting paid $40 million by that time.
You know who's really smiling, or maybe not smiling, but he could be hating somewhere? Le'Veon Bell. Remember Le'Veon Bell held out for an entire season because he wanted to help the running back market, and it obviously backfired on him in his situation. But when you see contracts like this, especially when it comes to the usage of Christian McCaffrey, like, it's clearly justified to pay him this much, if not even more. I think running backs around the league are happy. Now they ain't getting this contract, but just to see a running back, a guy at that position, give value to that extent, that's awesome. Because I tell young kids right now, hey, play high school running back, whatever, but train as a receiver. Mm-hmm. Because you do not want to be a running back going into college. They don't value you in the draft. They don't value you in the NFL. They don't want to pay you second contracts. Don't be a running back. Just go play receiver. But
advice.
This right here is, I think that's a W for the running backs around the league. Now, hopefully other guys, end up getting paid as well.
Yeah, and the more Christian McCaffrey's contract goes up, the more that the next guy can ask a little bit more, and we've seen it with Brandon Aiyuk. He can ask a little bit more because, Amon-Ra St. Brown got a little bit more, and Justin Jefferson got a lot more. And, as soon as that ceiling gets a little bit higher, you see other guys able to ask a little bit more, even if they don't get all the way to the top. So, yeah, I think that's important for running backs, because really it's the running back salaries around the league just have not grown over the last decade. And it's crazy that Christian McCaffrey now is onto his third contract in the NFL, and for 2 contracts in a row, the highest paid running back in the NFL.
And there were other guys. There were guys trying to get paid, like Saquon Barkley, Nick Chubb. Like those guys held out. Josh Jacobs. These were guys. Josh Jacobs led the NFL in rushing and could not get that big contract. These guys,
Crazy.
They tried to do everything in their power to get more money. And the league is just like, we don't really care about running backs unless your name is Christian McCaffrey.
Right. So Christian McCaffrey back at minicamp, new contract in hand. Brandon Aiyuk, the only holdout from 49ers camp. Trent Williams not there, but he's attending his daughter's graduation. So Aiyuk is the one player who's not at camp, who's supposed to be there at mandatory minicamp. And let's talk a little bit more about the plan now that we're starting to see the 49ers put into place at wide receiver, running back, those skill positions on offense next. The next segment of Locked On 49ers is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest, big or small. Certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life. And I can't stress this enough. You can't let that small thing become the big thing in your life. And that's where therapy comes in. Therapy can be different for everyone. And, most of us have a lot bigger problems than our favorite sports team, even though it feels like, especially post Super Bowl loss. And some folks can't even come back to the podcast. I get this all the time. Some would be on social media, be like, hey, I still can't listen to the podcast, but I appreciate you doing it every day. I'll come back soon and start listening. Right. So, therapy for small things can be important, but a lot of us have bigger things in our lives than our favorite sports teams. It's important to get those things off our chest every once in a while. And sometimes you just need to check in with the therapist, make sure you're hitting the points you want to hit in your life every single week. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible, suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right. Voice of the fan, Nicholas Winkler. Where are we at? If a 49ers fan is looking at this 49ers roster, good feels, Christian McCaffrey, all right, we got mandatory minicamp. It's like, I got Brandon Aiyuk. Brandon Aiyuk's not there. Where are we at? What DEFCON number are we at with Brandon Aiyuk and the holdout not showing up to mandatory minicamp? It's mandatory, Wink.
I know, but we kind of saw this coming, right? But as a fan, you're sitting back, you just hoped that he'd show up. At least oh, yeah, I'm going to show up, but maybe my ankle is a little sore or something. Maybe you just be there. Yeah, the hold in.
He's straight out.
He's nothing. And then you see these huge contracts. Like, I'll be honest, when I saw the Justin Jefferson contract, I was like, oh, God, that hurts. That hurts our negotiations. I don't like it one bit.
It's funny because you want the players to get paid, and oh man, it's awesome when you see how excited and how important it was for Juwan Jennings to get paid, even though it's nowhere close to what Brandon Aiyuk's going to get. Christian McCaffrey deserves every cent that he gets playing the position he plays, and Brandon Aiyuk's going to deserve it all too. But then you're also like, oh man, the 49ers could have probably paid him less. They just signed him a little bit earlier. So it's like you're kind of rooting for both sides at the same time.
And you keep seeing them too, right? Like with the St. Brown and what Smith, right? Devonta Smith, like they just keep coming. It's just like, oh, another one, and then the Jefferson one, which just resets the market as the highest paid non-quarterback, right? And you're like, oh God, this is not what the 49ers want to see. Aiyuk's loving it. Aiyuk's like, yeah, come on, keep coming. But as a fan too, it raised my level. I think I was at a 5 DEFCON. I'm at like a 6.5 now.
How high does DEFCON go? And is low or high the worst number for DEFCON?
We might be doing it wrong. Yeah.
I think 5 is, I think it only goes to 5. I think it goes 1 to 5. And I think 1 is actually worse. So DEFCON 5, if I'm not mistaken, and let us know, guys, the DEFCON experts out there. I think DEFCON 5 means all clear. You're in the green. DEFCON 1
is like Ouch.
We're at war, right? I think that's how it goes. I could be wrong though. I need to be schooled on the DEFCONs.
Scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the scared, 6.5.
Croc, what's the plan at wide receiver? Michael Silver had an interesting one. Do you want to hear Silver's plan, or do you want to give us your plan? Okay, this is what there's not really the plan, but this is what Mike Silver had to say after the signing of Christian McCaffrey. Mike Silver, San Francisco Chronicle, said, very short version of where things stand with the 49ers and their receivers. By the way, you can find him at Mike Silver on Twitter. 1, they drafted Pearsall in the first round. He's a big part of the present and the future. Okay, yeah, they drafted a first-round receiver. I think they plan to use him, so that's not breaking any news there. Number 2, if Aiyuk ends up taking their best offer, Debo will be gone in 2024. And that's the plan, Croc, we've been talking about for over a year, and that's the most obvious plan, I think the most likely plan. And I think these are kind of in order, most likely too, and a lot of stuff we've talked about before on the podcast. Number 3, if Aiyuk doesn't take their best offer and presumably plays on his 5th-year option, it's Hunger Games between him and Debo to see who stays beyond 2024 next year. And then number 4, there's still a chance Aiyuk or Debo could be traded between now and the November trade deadline. So he's not even talking about post-June 1st. He's not even talking about before training camp. He's talking about the trade deadline in November. If the offer is good enough and or if things have devolved with Aiyuk in those negotiations. So that is the latest from Mike Silver on where the 49ers likely stand. None of that's probably super different than what we've been talking about, right, Croc? Is Christian McCaffrey part of the wide receiver plan, though, is my question.
I know you keep throwing that out. I don't think so. And I feel like every time I think that a team would do something logical like that, like, man, Christian McCaffrey's a terrific receiver. Let's start using him more there. It's like, no, we see him as a running back, even though he could do all these things. We're going to continue to use him that way. Just like I think with Debo Samuel, we keep looking at him as a wide back and like, no, we want you to do more receiver type stuff. And they're like, no, we're going to continue to use him like a wide back because that's what he's best at. So I think Christian McCaffrey, his best value to the team is running the ball. The 49ers clearly are a team that built their entire identity around being able to run the ball, and Christian McCaffrey has done it better than anyone ever. No, I don't want to slight Frank Gore, but he's done it very well.
Yeah. And the numbers say that he did.
All right. So Wink, Croc is a non-believer in my idea that Christian McCaffrey is and should transition into the future wide back for the San Francisco 49ers, take some carries off his plate, start giving him more work in the passing game, elongate his career, make that 2027 a contract that you still want to pay Christian McCaffrey, and he might be something into his 30s still for the 49ers in that more wide back usage, still a running back, but really heavy in the passing game, out of the slot. Utilize this weapon that you have in Christian McCaffrey and allow him to get a 4th contract in the NFL and not just be run straight into the ground with the most touches in the NFL and play 20 games a season with 20 touches. 20 carries, especially, which, a touch is, not all touches are the same. But for non-believer Eric Crocker, how about this quote from Kyle Shanahan himself? Where have you heard this idea before? Quote, we've got to protect Christian from himself, asking about the workload that Christian McCaffrey's had the last couple of years. Quote, we've got to protect Christian from himself. That is something we can protect him from more. If he's just taking the wear and tear with 20 carries every game, we'd like to take some of that off him. And that's especially the first time I've really heard Kyle Shanahan say that. And he said it on the day that they gave Christian McCaffrey the money that he deserves because of how often he touches the ball.
I understand because we've all seen the videos. We're watching the games. Christian McCaffrey comes out. He's holding up the number 1. The backup has one play, and then I'm back in. So when he talks about trying to save him from himself, I understand. But part of it is like, Kyle, that's kind of BS because I've seen you run guys into the ground. Like,
in June,
was Elijah Mitchell telling you one play and then I'm coming back in? Like, no, Elijah Mitchell was Band-Aid taped together, held together with super glue, trying to go through the game. You were up like 3 touchdowns, and Kyle's like, run Elijah Mitchell again. He had 27 carries entering the game where he was like a game-time decision with his body falling apart. So I think not only does Christian McCaffrey, I think that's Kyle's way of kind of saving his own ass, knowing I would plan to give him the ball every time anyways.
No doubt. Yeah, sounds great in June, but when it comes time to be in the third quarter of a football game, week 1, and you're trying to win, you're going to keep handing the rock to number 23.
I mean, there's quite a few times I'm sure my fellow fans out there listening right now are thinking the same thing. We're like, remember that game last year in the fourth quarter where you're up 2 touchdowns and he's still running McCaffrey and you're yelling, get McCaffrey off the field. Like, that's what he does. That's a Shanahan move.
But he's using McCaffrey as a scapegoat on this, saying, oh, no, that's CMC, though. We got to save him from himself. But it's like, bro, there's further evidence that you prefer this. Like, we've seen that. When he's been a guy who I think we thought he would be a guy that wants 2 backs. And he was kind of known for that, right? Coming from Atlanta. We've seen him use a bunch of different running backs for the 49ers. But the different 49ers running backs that he's used have been more out of necessity because of injuries, not because he just wants 2 guys that split carries. And I think Elijah Mitchell in that situation, that was the clearest picture.
Only guy he trusted, right?
Yeah.
The way to get around that for Kyle is to make Christian McCaffrey the wide back and have him out there catching passes so he's still on the field, but he's just not lined up behind the quarterback all the time. It does feel, though, guys, last thing here, Wink, it does feel, though, like a little bit more today than it did maybe the day after the draft that potentially Brandon Aiyuk could not be a 49er long-term. Like, not that it's likely that he doesn't sign. I still feel it's very likely that he signs. And, you know, as was laid out there and what we talked about, the plan all along, Debo gets traded in 2024. Aiyuk gets re-upped now. I think that's still the plan. But it is possible with the crazy money out there, maybe even Debo's or maybe even Aiyuk's agent comes back with even a bigger number than he had before. And the 49ers already didn't want to pay the old number. If they agreed on numbers, he'd already be signed. Feels a little bit more likely that it's possible that Aiyuk plays his last year with the 49ers this year.
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like I said, I don't like the other big contracts. They keep coming. No more. Hopefully there's no more big contracts between now and the beginning of the season, but something crazy is going to happen. Real quick story. When I was in Sicily, so one day I don't wear 49er gear. I wore 49er gear almost the whole time I was there. One day I'm in this town called Cefalu, this little beach town. I'm walking by and I see a guy with a 49er hat on, right? And so, you know, I walk by, I give him a nod. I'm like, hey, go 49ers. And he clearly doesn't speak English because he's just like, blah, 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 in Italian, just like giving me the, like, what are you talking about? Oh, God, it's for real. Everybody really talks like this. Just coming at me. I'm like, no, 49ers. And he takes his hat off. He looks at it. He's like, oh, and just walks away. I'm like, he clearly had no idea what the hat was that he was wearing. Nah, no idea. It was great.
By the way, I wonder who has those like 49ers Super Bowl champion t-shirts.
Maybe they have them out there. He got the Super Bowl hat and the t-shirt.
It was just a super generic SF 49er hat. You know, it was great to see.
All right, Wink, thanks for joining us once again. Welcome back from your vacations around the world. Thanks to all the listeners out there, all the everydayers. We appreciate you. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. Check out the Peacock and Williamson show as well in the network, talking about the entire league, myself and former scout Matt Williamson. We got Locked On Sports today. We've got the 24-hour Locked On Sports Today stream on YouTube and Amazon Fire TV. Check it all out. Make sure you're subscribed. Back tomorrow with Crocky right here. Locked On 49ers.
See you.